This is Blu Laker, and we are here in Las Vegas at Radio Tribune, right here in Las Vegas. And hopefully you're listening to Cobra USA, and I am a host, Blu Laker. Today, with healthcare and everything being on the main burner here in the United States, we have to look at the potential options that we might be able to employ, not just to eradicate Obamacare, but going on further. Now, it's easy to say, okay, we'll take care of it for the moment, but are we taking care of it for the long run? And in consideration of the long run and the various people that are involved, classifications of people, if you were, classifications of people are sometimes determined by their incomes. Now, some people will just make minimum wage. That's not very much money. And they still have to eat and pay rent, pay the utilities and telephone bills and everything else. So it doesn't go very far, because after taxes you don't have a whole bunch left. And if you have children and you're the sole support, you've got a problem. Living below the poverty scale. But what I'm talking about today is going to reflect upon economics and how we can make it a little bit more fair for everybody. And it's not the distribution of wealth or redistribution of wealth, but common sense approach to how the average person, or perhaps the people in the lower income brackets, can adjust and have a quality of life that is more than check to check, that's more than paying off debt and not being able to accumulate anything. So when we look at major costs, it used to be that some of the major costs were your fuel for your car and your fuel for your home, water, utilities, and things of that nature. But now, with so many people on welfare and subsidies, the cost of doing business has gone up exceedingly. And the one thing that we have to be careful about is the deficit. Yes, the deficit. And how we're going to pay it down, and how we're going to get rid of the problems that are associated with it. With Obamacare, for example, 60%, I'm told, 60% of the people on Obamacare are either on subsidies or they're not even in the program. And yes, we are talking about getting rid of Obamacare because we cannot afford to have an increased deficit. We have to cut it off someplace. So, what about the 20 million people that didn't have Obamacare before Obamacare came on board? Now, that's the number that they quote. I'm not quite sure what the real numbers are, but if 60% of the people are on subsidies and grants, or somehow or another have their costs reduced, then 40% of the population is paying the burden of those costs. Well, there's a couple problems here. The problems are, do we have enough qualified physicians and technicians to handle the load? Well, I'm going to try to point out some of the statistical information. Now, I'm doing an analysis. I'm not doing an audit because I'm not capable of doing an audit. But I can use the numbers that other people have cited in terms of where we are and where we have to go. You see, a friend of mine was showing me a bottle of ketchup this morning. Oh yeah, I know, what's that got to do with it? And so he was pointing out to me, and of course I knew, that the particular bottle of ketchup he had was full. It couldn't take any more. And I likened it to him as to our capacity, carrying capacity here in the United States, financially, medically, and probably a few more. We see our financial bottle is full, that, or we wouldn't have the deficit, would we? We'd have room to take on some more. But if you can't put any more in a jar, and we're talking about recipients of welfare and subsidies and the like, if you can't put any more in the jar, that jar being the deficit and is already full, what happens? It spills out onto the sides, gets no attention. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to bring attention to the fact that not only do we have to try to provide medical facilities for all U.S. citizens, we also, and it has to be fair, reliable, and consist of quality treatment. Quality treatment is an issue because there are obvious deficiencies in the medical profession. Fortunately, they're not a lot, but when you're dealing with 330 million people in one country, hopefully you have 10, 15, 20, maybe 40% of the people in very good health, and the others are somewhere in between good and bad, and that places a burden if we are going to have a fair and equitable payment. Well, can't really do that because some people have bigger problems than others. Heart failure, cancers, you know, those kinds of things, those kinds of what I consider as major issues. The other medical conditions that we run into are things like the flu, colds, asthma, you know, the whole realm of things. Some people have liver problems, heart problems, you know, there are so many potential problems that we can't put it in one situation that fits all. No, there are various sectors, and because of that, there's additional risk and obviously a lot more cost involved in some of the procedures and surgeries and things that go on. So, can we spread it out by redistribution of funds? No, that wouldn't be fair. It wouldn't be fair to the people that take care of themselves, the people who consider the future in addition to their own well-being. Because you see, if you only take care of yourself for the time being, then all of a sudden we run into the same situation again down the road. So what we need is a comprehensive plan that will take care of all needs at one time and to reward those who take care of themselves, have good health. Non-smokers, for example, people who exercise regularly, people who understand that even the human body can only take so much food, so much wine, so much liquor, all of those things. But there are so many people that just don't know what to do or they won't take the time to correct the issues. Sure, they can do it. We've seen people who have lost tremendous amounts of weight, hundreds of pounds in some cases, who have come back from the dead, if you want to call it. We've seen other people who were overweight have lost the weight and are in very good health now, and very appreciative of the fact that they were able to do it themselves. But on the other hand, we have to address all concerns, and in so doing so, we have to look at the physical responsibility, the financials of how to make it work. We all know that the cost of healthcare is exorbitant, that whether it happened to be under Obamacare or other things, well, let's take Obamacare for example, with high deductibles, high rates, and not enough people to support it. They just can't afford to be in the program. It doesn't make good sense for them to have to pay exorbitant amount of money and then have the high deductibles, $4,000 or $5,000 deductibles to get a procedure done. So how are you going to handle that? By looking at the options that are out there and available to us. I'll give you an example of that. You know, the security of this country is absolutely necessary. That's why we have men in the services. I'm talking about the Army, the Navy, Air Force, Coast Guard, you know, all the various service sectors. We even have, to a degree, a medical services, the nurses. However, they're not, although they may be a branch of the service, they're not for all of us. That's for the servicemen. And so what we really need to do is we need to bring more medically minded people into the occupation and to be able to provide additional services and to cover the areas that haven't been covered before. So how are we going to do that? Well, what we need to do is create a program which, in my opinion, could be called the USA Medical Corps. The USA Medical Corps would be a group of physicians, paralegals, and other aides necessary in the dispensing of medical treatments. Well, how would you do that? Well, how did they put the National Guard together? How did they put the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, and all those services not together, but individually? Well, that's exactly what they did. They put them together individually because some of those are very specialized. The Corps of Army Engineers. All of those things are specialties within the ranks of the United States. And we can do the same thing with medical. And to provide additional jobs for probably 90% of the people who are currently unemployed. And it would operate just like the service does. If you get people who genuinely care about humanity and the self-worth of other people, and they perform services for humanity, they are entitled to compensation. They're entitled to have a job in a sector that they could enjoy, would enjoy, and would be appreciated by the rest of us. Just like the Army or the Navy or the Air Force, they would be paid, but they would have to go through an induction period where they had to study to learn what is necessary. You know, even something as simple as CPO, in order to get the proper training that they need to perform the jobs that we're asking them to do. Now you say, well, how are we going to pay for all that? Well, key question. Definitely a key question. But we can. And we can do it in such a way that it makes sense. In such a way that we are actually saving money and putting it to use by creating other jobs. So I have to give you an example, don't I? If, for example, you get the medical profession to agree, and I said agree, to certain rates for individuals perhaps can't afford the services of normal, and then you say, well, wait a minute, Blu, how are you going to do that? Well, I've always been of the mind that you have to give people something they want for something you want. We need good medical service, quality medical service. We can't get it from people we just hire off the streets. Oh, not at first, at least, because they have to go through the training program that's going to allow them to move through the ranks and to gain better positions and better pay. Oh, how can we afford to do that? Well, we can do it by savings and by compulsory medical duty. Oh, well, wait a minute, we're not going to do that. They won't make as much money. Well, then you haven't thought it through, clearly, have you? Because what I said, give them something they want for something you want. We need the services. They may need the tax deductions. They may need a cap on malpractice suits. They may have limits as to what they can charge for particular services, and they'll have to perform. Is the National Guard reserve duty compulsory? Yes, because there's obviously new and innovative things that come up, equipment and the like that is required for them to survive in battle situations. That's the same thing with most industries, even the automobile business. You know, we didn't have a lot of the technical achievements that we have today 15, 20 years ago. And in order for the mechanics to stay up with it, they have to continuously train. And maybe they don't have a mechanical reserve that tells them to go back to school. But there are states that do require people in various trades to take an update to make sure that they're aware of the new forms and new procedures in order to perform their duties. And so this is not much different than that. What it does, though, is it creates a lot of new jobs, thousands, hundreds of thousands of new jobs in the medical profession, which we are in short supply of. How many times have you gone into the doctor's office and sat around for an hour or two, three, maybe even 4 hours before you got in to see the doctor? I have. I'm sure that many other people have experienced the same thing. What does it say? It says that they have a caseload. What if you can't get in to see a particular doctor for 2 or 3 months? Should you continue to suffer, or should you have an option on how to correct that problem? Well, I believe that you should have an option. Yes, you say, well, emergency services are there. Well, emergency services can be just as bad as going to see the doctor, and especially if you have an emergency. Most people can't sit around in pain for hours after hours after hours. They need to have medical attention as soon as possible. So we have all of these areas to address. We have the cost of insurance being sky high because Not everybody's paying for it, and therefore the costs go on to other people. Usually those are the ones that are healthy. And how would you like to pay into a program for year after year after year and not have to use the services? Oh, that by itself would be okay if the rates were within reason. Because if you take, and I'll use this as an example, the contributions that you make to Social Security, you pay for them over a lifetime. And if you are able to make it to Social Security, and I'm talking about time-wise, the age being 62, 65, and now they're talking about making it to 67 or 68. I don't know exactly what it is. I happen to be in Social Security, but I've been in it for a long time. And so Medicare has helped me in the past. And I would expect that it would continue. However, there's a lot of people that don't reach it, so therefore the money that they've put into the system is swallowed. Is it used to pay other people's problems? Maybe. But we know that the federal government has literally robbed the Social Security system blind. And with no guilt, no remorse, and no repayment. So, the saying goes that if you had paid into Social Security and you had put your money into something that could make money, you could have enough to retire on all by yourself with 10 times more money coming in. So there is a way for us as Americans to be able to do the same thing with Medicare or medical insurance. Because if you have a pool where the money is being deposited and used legitimately, and it is specifically designed so that it addresses your concerns over your lifetime, then the savings that occur are probably enough to carry on Social Security for another 100 years or so. But is that the only means by which we can live? No, it's not. What about the cost of hospitals, the cost, the operational cost that's required? Because if they continue to go up, guess what? The price of insurance and medical service will also have to go up as well. So there needs to be considerations. I'll give you an example here in Las Vegas. The Veterans Administration Hospital here in North Las Vegas, recently completed, well, recent, within a few years. The initial estimate was $640 million. Now, I can't tell you for sure that it included all costs. All I can say is that the reported number was $640 million, and it could have exceeded that by another $300 million. And if that's the case, we're talking about $1 billion. It's on 115 acres in North Las Vegas. We don't know if that number included the purchase of the land. We don't know if that number included the equipment necessary to run a hospital or not. We just know that there's only 90 beds. 90 beds. And whether it's 650 million or $1 billion, billion, dollars, that really puts the focus on where all that money went. Certainly can't be in cement blocks and things like that, can it? Well, so now I'm going to get into the real reason for today's talk, so I may not get finished with it. I'm at least going to make you aware of it. If we had to build another 10 veterans hospitals, and the cost was $640 million to operate a 90-bed facility, what is the cost per bed? Think about that. And if it's only for 90 beds, now that doesn't mean that they don't see other people on a daily basis. It's basically talking about beds. And, well, we don't have a bed today, you're going to have to wait till tomorrow, whatever, I don't know. We do know that it's not adequate. Not when Las Vegas has 2 million plus people. Oh, sure, they're not all veterans. But it doesn't take very long to fill up those beds, and it does take a long time to get the appointments to go in there, and especially if you need a bed. Now, what if instead of $640 million for one hospital, it was $640 million for 10 hospitals? Yeah, about $6,500,000 a piece, completely furnished with all the necessary medical equipment that is necessary. Would that make a lot of sense? Well, I think the answer to that is pretty obvious. Of course it would. If you can get 10 facilities for the price of one with 650 beds instead of 90, is there a savings there? Or is that just way above everybody's head? Can't explain it all today, but I can tell you that there is a way to get it done. There is a way for us to turn liabilities into assets. There is a way for us to save the money. And if we only built one of these every month or every 3 or 4 months, and we spent $6,500,000 to do the same job. Notice I said $6,500,000, not $640 million. Would we have saved money? Would we have performed the same services? And the answer, of course, is yes. So for now, if you have a problem with what we just said or what I have just said, you can call me. Call me at 702-743-8297. I'll be happy to go into greater detail for you. Oh, and this is not the end of the story. There's more. Yes, there's a lot more. Because it's not just the end of Obamacare that we're talking about. It's going to be the end of birthers. It's going to be the end of unnecessary subsidies to people not qualified for those subsidies. It's going to be the end of giveaways from the federal government, and it's going to take people, it's going to make people make the right choices and help. Because you see, this isn't a one-man job. And while Donald Trump is doing his best to change this around, he couldn't do it. Nor could I, nor could any one person do it by themselves. It's going to take the cooperation, the opinions of people just like you to help with progress here in the United States. And that's why we elected a new president to turn around the problems that were created by the Obama administration, to make America great again. To make America great again, we all have to cooperate. We can't have divisiveness. We can't have name calling or demeaning people. We have to cooperate. And we all have to be going in the same direction. So for today, this is Blu Laker. We're at Radio Tribune in Las Vegas, Nevada. And this show is called Cobra USA. Have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow. And by all means, don't forget that number, 702-743-8297. And this is Blu Laker. Thank you.